Hi, I'm Laura Varela, and I'm a filmmaker and media artist. I have a documentary that's broadcasting right now. It's called As Long as I Remember, American Veteranos. I had several uncles who went to Vietnam. I had a couple of aunts whose fiancés died in Vietnam as well. Everybody in the Mexican-American community that I know had somebody who went to Vietnam. I would have loved to have told the story of my family, but I don't live in El Paso. And those are really hard wounds to kind of pick open as well. And so what I decided to do was kind of tell a story about San Antonio through the eyes of these artists and how they're using art to kind of deal with that legacy. Eduardo Garza is a Vietnam veteran. He's a local poet and an actor. He's come on a lot of independent films and does a lot of voiceover work. And he was one of the first people I met in San Antonio when I moved here in '94. Juan Farias is a visual artist. He's an abstract artist, very well recognized. And this is one of his pieces here, actually, when he was still doing, before he started doing abstract work. And I met him when he had studio space at the 1906 Gallery. And let's see, Michael Rodriguez is a writer. He wrote a book called Humidity Moon. He's been in several anthologies writing about the Vietnam War. And I met him through one of my humanities advisors, Ben Olguin, who had already written about him and his book, and so he recommended that I talk to him. It's not just the three men; it's the three main the main stories, and then it branches out to other people in the community that are related to them somehow. There's universal stories and there's universal themes that run the gamut of veterans' experiences. But I find when I screen the film in different parts of the country, I just came from San Diego, and there was a line of Vietnam veterans sitting in the front, and they told me, you know, those stories that you pick, those people who you chose to pick, that could have been anybody. I feel in particular that I'm very good in terms of story. I'm very good in terms of story. I'm very good in terms of the passion for the project. Because when you do a documentary, you have to literally be married to this project for many years. I feel like I'm good in terms of the social, of talking to people. I can talk to people and I can get a story out of them. It took a lot of lunches. It took a lot of hanging out with these men to get them to be at a space where they're comfortable enough to share their stories with us. I was able to get into a post-traumatic stress disorder, like a group therapy session. I was able to get in there. War affects you many, many years after. It's not just you go and you serve and you come back and you're fine. The psychological effects, the post-traumatic stress disorder can last for many, many years, and that's what these men are still getting treated. Some of the men are still getting treated for PTSD. I think also, I guess when they came home, a lot of people didn't want to talk about the war with them. The military has always been known as a stepping stone to the middle class, and a lot of the men still, their healthcare providers is the VA. But the ones in San Antonio, they all volunteered, and their dads served in World War II. We had really high numbers that were serving proportionate to our population in the United States at the time. I think also they were serving not in the rear. They were the ones who actually were in the front lines. They weren't getting those jobs. They weren't getting the college deferments and things like that. So a lot of men, and actually a lot of them volunteered. A lot of them also got drafted, but a lot of them volunteered. And so I think in terms of our sacrifice, our service, our contribution to the United States and all the different conflicts, I mean, I feel that we need to at least just acknowledge and recognize in terms of the history books and of the films and just all the documentation. Some other veterans will talk about being spit on and people calling them baby killers and whatnot, but for Mexican Americans, I think it was really different because their families were really proud of them. Their families came and they would have a party for them. So how are they going to complain that they're having nightmares, that they're not the same, that something's going on internally with them? A lot of them waited many, many years before they got treatment. There's something very real that people have to deal with. It's something that anything traumatic can give you post-traumatic stress disorder. It doesn't have to only be war. It could be an assault, a car accident. They say a lot of people who live in New York have PTSD from 9/11. Just the fact that these men are so young, when their personalities are still being molded, and having to, and even the men now, every day could be the last day of your life, and seeing horrors that most people don't normally see. And so a lot of people talk about Mexican Americans or Latinos being recent immigrants. No, we've been here since before the United States. Mexican Americans have participated in the wars since the Civil War. Galveston is named after General Galvez, which was this Navy captain. A lot of times too, many of them went out of a sense of duty, a sense of like wanting to contribute to this country, a sense of patriotism. That patriotism later, it changed, or the reasons for being there changed. I know that one of the things that a lot of the men talk about is that they went in for one reason, thinking they're going in to fight for one reason, but then when they're actually there, they're really just fighting for each other. They were fighting for their buddy. They were fighting to keep, a lot of people talk about racism in the military and whatnot, and some of them touch on that. But ultimately, when you're in combat, it's a bond that I just learned that it's a bond that can never be broken. Because they originally thought that they were fighting communism, and they were fighting that ripple effect. But when they got there, I think for a lot of Mexican Americans, they recognized that these were a family culture, an agrarian culture. Like a lot of Mexican Americans, a lot of the jobs that they had here in the United States was in the fields, in the migrant fields, in the agricultural fields. And so these families in Vietnam work together as a family. Like a lot of Mexican Americans, they're a very close family structure. They recognized a lot of themselves. Like we look at Emiliano Zapata. Eduardo Diaz says that. He says he's my hero. He says he has the same thing as the Vietnamese. Give me land. We want our land and we want our liberty. And so a lot of Mexican Americans recognize this. I feel that they think that if they can contribute to, I think, that national healing or what's going on now with the wars now, I know that they're very happy to talk about their experience. If it can bring some sort of if it can touch somebody. I would like for the national audience to take away the story of veterans. These are American veterans. That's why it's called American Veteranos, as long as I remember, American Veteranos. And to recognize that universality, I'm saying for that experience of a young man going off to war, and the family that is back home waiting for him, and the issues that they deal with when they come back. But I also want them to recognize that Mexican Americans are not foreigners. We're not foreigners in a foreign land. This used to be our land. This used to be Mexico till 1848. And we have always been here, and we have always served this country proudly. And I think we have to. We are dealing with our own issues. Smile, Pooch.